All right, it's day 3. Day 3 is going to be a big one, guys. On day 3 of the textured owl crochet along, we are going to hit this curly mess here. And this is a little denser than we're going to do it. I actually ended up adding a few rounds even of SCs to try to speed up the process of this guy a little bit. Testers were taking well over 2 hours to get his head done, and I couldn't have you guys taking a whole whopping 2 hours to do that. So we changed it up just slightly. It is still the exact same stitch pattern. It will just be just a slightly bit less dense, but it's a good thing. Okay, it's a very good thing. This should take you significantly less time, but this is still going to be probably the biggest, chunkiest part of the crochet along. Is going to be getting this guy's head done. The stitch we're using, I like to call it chain curls. It's sometimes called the twisted chain curls, or sometimes even just faux fur. And you will see it's going to be very cool. But it creates this awesome curliness right here. And if you can see, our fabric is all the way in there. So they're nice big long curls. And if you really wanted to, you could make them even longer than I do in this. So let's get started on our head. The first thing we need to do is chain 2. Shocker, right? Okay, so, and then we're going to 6 SC in the second chain from the hook. Alrighty. 5 and 6. Pull that tight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to increase in each stitch around. 1 increase, 2 increases, 3 increases, 4 increases, 5, and 6. That's 12 stitches total. Okay. Pull that good and tight on the back there. Alrighty, now we're going to start our chain curls. And what we're going to do is every time, we're going to work in the front loops only of our work here. And the reason we're going to do that is so that the curls stay on the front side of the work. And then when we're done doing our curls in the front loop only, we're going to work in the exposed back loop of this same round in order to move the height of the piece upward. So the actual round that has the curls on it will just kind of face forward. The background will face backwards, and then that's how we will move upward. So it actually is going to take 2 rounds of one of curls and 1 worked even to move up at all. And then we're going to add another round even to move it up again. So to start out, every single one of our stitches is going to be a chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then slip stitch into the front loop only of the next stitch. So we're going to slip stitch right here. Now, this is where I like to add in my stitch marker, and you'll see why when we get closer to the end of rounds. But these back loops become very difficult to see, in especially the first stitch and the last stitch. And so having a marker, we're going to move that marker from the first stitch to the last stitch back and forth so that we can find those stitches every time and not get lost. Woo, that was exciting. All right, so we've chained 6, slip stitch in the next stitch. Okay, don't worry about keeping this chain flat. Don't worry about it twisting. It's going to be perfectly okay if it twists. Slip stitch into the front loop only of the next stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Slip stitch into the front loop only. We're just going to keep doing that all the way around. 4, 5, 6. There's our stitch, working into the front loop only. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I chose to slip stitch into the front loops. You can do it with an SC if you wanted to. I just find that the slip stitches make it more streamlined, and it makes the stitches on the following rounds a lot easier to see when they don't look exactly the same as a regular SC. And you'll see what I mean here in a minute. 3, 4, 5, 6. But when we get back around to the beginning, we need to be able to very clearly see those back loops that we've left so that we can work into them in the next round. All right, slip stitch into the front loop only. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Slip stitch, front loop only. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Front loop only. And now we're to our last stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I learned that when you come around to this last stitch on the chain rounds, it is easier to mark this back loop before you insert your hook into the front loop, because once you insert your hook into the front loop, it kind of pulls that back loop tight. So we're going to take our stitch marker out of the first stitch, if my fingers work, and we're going to move it. So here's our last stitch right here. We're going to put this marker in the back loop of that stitch, and then pick our working yarn back up and do our slip stitch in the front loop of that last stitch. And what that does is makes that back loop that is extremely hard to see when you're coming back around marked for us so that we can find it again. So you'll see we've left this ridge on the back of the work. And these are all of the back loops that we left unworked when we worked in the front loops only. So on this next round, we're going to work our increase round. So we're going to work an SC increase, and we're going to work in only those back loops from the previous round. So make sure that you're pulling your chains to the front side because you want them all on the front side. And we're going to go around on, so here we go. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and our marked one makes 12. All right, so working in the back loops from the previous round, we're going to work an SC and then an increase, an SC, and then an increase, SC, and an increase. And this is a lot easier if you kind of push your curls down, and then look at that. You can see that ridge really easily right here. That makes it a lot easier if you kind of push them down toward you while you're working, and you can really see that ridge in order to find the place to put your hook. SC and an increase. Hold them down. We do SC, and we increase in our marked back loop. That is the last stitch of the round. Awesome. So we're going to go forward again into the first stitch of the next round. So it's going to be the first stitch that you made after your slip stitch. So here's the slip stitch. And you can see that it looks a lot different than the SC sitting right next to it. So here's your slip stitch and here's your SC. And that's the biggest reason why I chose to use slip stitches on my chain rounds, because I won't accidentally work into the slip stitch or into the top of this stitch in thinking it's the first stitch of the next round, because it's a slip stitch and not an SC. So that's my reasoning for using SCs between the chains instead of single crochets. So we're going to go ahead and move our marker, and we're not going to work in the back loops only on this next one, but I want to mark this anyway because I want to be able to find my starting point very easily. So this next round is another increase round, and we're going to work in both loops, and this is just to move the body of the work up a little bit faster. You could, just alternate chain stitches and, working in the front loops and then working in the back loops, and it would grow much slower and it would be much denser, but it would also take a really long time. So we don't want that. So let's go ahead and work our next set of increases in both loops and move things along, shall we? So 2 SC and an increase 6 times is our increase round. So here's 1, 2, and an increase. Okay, 1, 2, and an increase. 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 And we have made it back around to our first stitch, okay? So there's our marked stitch that we just worked into. So let's go ahead and move our stitch marker up to the back loop of the first stitch, and we're going to do another round of chain loops. So we're going to do chain 6, slip stitch in the front loop only of the next stitch all the way around. So we're on chain 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Front loop only. We have our back loop marked so we can find it when we come back around. Slip stitch. Chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Front loop only. Slip stitch. 1. There. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And before I insert my hook on my last stitch, I'm going to move my stitch marker. So there's my last stitch. I'm going to move it to the back loop only of that stitch so that I can find it next time around. Slip stitch in the front loop and move on to the next round. There's where our first stitch was marked. So this is another increase round. So we're going to do 3 SC and an increase 6 times to get us to 30, and that is going to be the width, the widest point of our head. So we'll work with 30 stitches around from here on out after this round. Well, at least for the head. 3 and an increase. So there's 1, 2, 3, and an increase. 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 Aren't we done yet? Oh, yay. And there's 1, 2, 3. And we increase in that last marked back loop only. 1. Ta-da! Okay. Increase round done. So the first stitch of the next round is right here. So we're going to take our stitch marker and move it to the back loop of that stitch. This next round is going to be worked in both loops and worked around even. So just we're marking that stitch so we know where our starting stitch is, but working in both loops for this round, we're going to work SCs evenly around. So just 30 SCs in both stitches, nice and easy. For when you're doing big complex stitches like this, it's almost kind of a relief to do some rounds even here and there. All right. Definitely a relief. Relief for my fingers and my brain. Yay! Brain rest. But don't rest too much on these rounds because you do still have to count, unfortunately. But if you've gotten this far, you're probably, you know, pretty good at counting, so. Okay, almost there. La, la, la. And there is our mark stitch. So let's take that out and put it in the back loop of the first stitch. So the other way you can find that is that your final chain will always kind of look like it's going into that stitch there. But so there's the stitch that's in front of the final chain. There's the first stitch of the last round that we just made. And then I marked the back loop only again of the first stitch so that we can do our slip stitches into here and find our way back around. 4, 5, 6, and we're going to work into the front loop only and slip stitch. We're going to do this all the way around. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and for the next 12 rounds, we are going to work even these same 3 rounds over and over again. So we're going to work this chain 6 slip stitch in the front loops only round, and then an SC in the back loops only round worked even, and then an SC in both loops worked even. And we're going to repeat those 3 rounds 4 times total. So you'll do rounds 9, 10, 11, which is what we were just talking about. And then for rounds 12 through 20, you will repeat those 3 rounds again 3 more times for a total of 4 times that you'll do that. When you get to round 14, there is a spot in your pattern that will say mark, and it will say mark. Please place marker at round 14 for future use. Round 14 is where we are going to install our eyes. It's where we're going to, remember, on the first day, oops, there's our nose. On the first day, we put our eyes in the pieces like this, but we left the backs off of them. When we mark round 14, that is going to tell us where we're going to insert those eye posts. So, because these rounds are worked even, these next 12 rounds are worked even, I am going to leave you to it and let you work these next 12 rounds on your own. So, meet me back here, do your 12 rounds, pause this video, go get a drink of water, stretch your fingers. Meet me back here at when you're done with round 20, and we will start round 21 together. It will be another round even, but that's okay. Then we're going to be moving on and doing a few decreases before we put in our eyes. So I will see you at round 21. Yay, we did it. We made it. We are at round 20, or just finished round 20 of our textured owl. Oh my gosh, how long did that take? And it took me a little while. It took me almost an entire episode of Doctor Who, so that's quite a while. So here is my marker at round 14. I used a cheapo plastic one since it keeps making noise on here. And since it has to clank around while we're doing everything else, I wanted to keep it marked. But let's get going on round 21. So let's see here. So we're going to slip stitch in the front loops only. There's our nice marked friend there. I snagged some of the loops, so hang on. Let's fix that because I can't stand that. That's ugly. All right. And 3, 4, 5, 6. And slip stitch into the front loop. So you can see how much fun and curl and bounciness this gets. Yes, it's definitely a yarn eater, but oh my gosh, this stitch, and I know you guys are probably ready to kill me. If you're ready to kill me, put it in the comments. That's fine. I get it. You can cuss me out. Your fingers can cuss me out. But I'm sure your fingers are also going, ooh, ah, feel how nice this is. So they may be angry at the moment because they're sore from doing lots and lots of chains. But the soft fuzziness is also a very good perk of this stitch. Four, 5, and 6, and front loop only. Done. Cool. All right, so round 22 is going to work in the exposed back loops, and this is going to be our first decrease round on our owl head. So we're going to do 3 SC and a decrease all the way around. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, and because we've only got one to work with here, I don't love doing invisible decreases on these. They aren't going to show, so I'm just going to do traditional decreases here. This would also make it easier if I need to like pull these aside and look and try to find them again, figure out which row is which. This would make it easier to do that. So if I can find the decreases, I know where I am. So we'll do 3, and then I'm going to do just standard traditional decreases where I'm pulling up a loop and then pulling up another loop and then working them together, rather than an invisible decrease where you go through both loops without ever pulling up a loop in order to make your decrease. So you can do it however you want. If you want to do invisible decreases here, you're welcome to. I'm not going to crawl through the camera and stop you. This is just how I like to do it and how I've learned works best in these situations where it's hard to see and it's hard to work. The easier I can make my stitches to see and differentiate, the better. One, 2, 3, and a decrease. And I'm almost done. 1, 2, 3, and our decrease is this stitch, and our last and final marked stitch, decrease. And I've lost my stitch marker down in the hole. Okay, mark our first stitch again so I know where I am in space. And we're going to work round 22. We just did round 22. Sorry, round 23 is working in both loops. We're going to do another decrease round. So 2 SC decrease 6 times, and that will take us down to 18 stitches around. And that kind of gives an owl a defined neck is our goal here. So I didn't want him to just have a squishy, a really too smooth of a transition from his neck to his body. I wanted it to be obvious where his head ended, even though there was going to be a lot of texture change there. So we went down a whole 2 decrease rounds in order to give him a really defined neck before we expand him back out again very, very quickly to create some shoulders. So 1, 2, and a decrease. One, 2, and a decrease. And we're almost back around already. Isn't that glorious? 2, and a decrease. All right, there. And move our stitch marker. All right, pull this little bit of chain that snuck into the body there back out. Alrighty, round 24 is a chain 6 round. This is our last round of chain stitches. You can either applaud or go, "Aw," but either way, it's our last round of chain loops, chain curls, sorry. 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's only 18 of them. Front loop only, slip stitch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, front loop only, and slip stitch. All right, we made it. We made it around our last round of chain curls. Isn't this the cutest thing you've ever seen? Oh, I love it. It's so fluffy. So we're going to do one more round real quick before we stop for the day crocheting, because I want to get, while we're still thinking about these back loops and how we can see them and how they work, we're going to put in our increases that make our shoulders real quick. And all we're going to do is put in an increase on every single one of these back loops only. It's going to take us very rapidly from 18 stitches to 36 stitches. And what that's going to do is create a nice rapid shoulder increase for our little owl before we start in on a completely different texture tomorrow. And I just wanted to do this while we were all still thinking about back loops only work, because after this we will be done with back loops only and front loops only texture for this project. Isn't that great? Aren't you happy? Or aren't you just so excited that you learned something as fun as front loop only textures and how to add them to things that you already know how to do? Alrighty. Da, da, da. So increase in each back loop around so that you have 36 stitches. And I'm going to encourage you, as usual, to count your stitches, because it's super easy, even after you feel like you've gotten really good at this, to lose count of your stitches. Really, really easy. Alrighty. So, almost done. And one last increase in that pesky back loop only that we have to mark every time. Huzzah! We're done. We're done. All right. I'm taking my stitch marker and putting it through my working yarn. That way I can kind of pull this not tight, but if it gets pulled tight, it's not, the world's not going to end while I'm not working on this tonight. But I'm not going to cut my yarn. because this is still going to stay attached to my working yarn, because we are going to come back and do the rest of this guy all on this same piece of yarn starting tomorrow. So really quickly, before we wrap it up for the day, let's put his eyes on, and then we'll feel really good about ourselves. So remember going back to that marked round that we did, that round 14. Well, pull out your eyes that we had from the other day, from day 1, and we did not put the backs on the posts of our eyes, and you're going to see the reason for that now. So what we're going to do is we're going to line those up with that marked row that we have, and I'm going to take my marker out now because I don't want it to get trapped underneath the eyeballs, and anywhere along there, so I'm just going to pick right here. This looks like a good spot. Stick one of those posts through that marked round. It's round 14. And then along that same round, you're just going to let this lay naturally and insert the post of the other one in the place where it wants to go along the same round. So I'm not going to tell you how many stitches between them they need to go, because these two circles are already attached. They've pretty much already decided how far they're going to be, and if you were to like stretch them or squish them, you'd notice. So I'm just going to do one at a time here. So let's do this side first. So we have them on. This will be where they are, okay, right along round 14. And I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to show you one of my tricks here is to either take some work that I have or like a coaster or something. I need something. Let's do a sticky note pad. And that way my eyes don't get scratched when I'm using my installation tool. So I put the eyeball face down on the pad, and I can see my post where I stuck it through right here. And I know this is going to be pretty tight. There are going to be some styles of safety eyes that you cannot get the backs on here. And that is totally okay. That's why we left those ends. That's why we left these. Right? So if you can't get this to work, if you cannot get these backs on, that's just fine. Mark them where they need to be, put your posts in where they need to be, and then put the backs on just on the white side, and then use your tails to attach your eyes. But here's what I'm going to do. Here's mine, and I'm going to see if I can get them on there. Oh, almost. All right, I'm going to flip them over so I have a better shot at getting them on. Okay. Oh yeah, that went on easy. Sweet. Okay, so flipped over, they went on just fine. This works for me because I'm not going to be giving this to a kid. If you are going to be giving it to a kid, it might be better for you to just put your backs on here and then sew this whole white piece to the face instead of using this method. But this is my lazy eye attachment method. Well, they're not lazy eyes, that'd be ridiculous, but you know what I'm saying. Lazy eye attachment method. There we go. All right, so we got his eye straight where I want it. I can put the other back on, and I'm not going to waste my own time. I'm going to put this one upside down too. And this spiffy guy, this is my insertion tool. This, see, it's hollow in the middle here, and it's great because it works for a lot of different sized washer backs, not just a couple. And this is awesome because you can use your whole hand on it. You get these from glasseyesonline.com. I am not an affiliate, just a humongous fan. So if you want to go get yourselves one of these, go for it. They do come in 2 sizes. So if you work with teeny tiny safety eyes a lot, they have one of those too. So, all right, here we go. So for the time being, I'm going to leave my tails on. I will probably trim those off later this evening. But if you managed to get your, safety eyes on through both layers, and these guys are now on here nice and tight, you can go ahead and cut these ends or weave them in and then cut them. But either way, they don't have to be here anymore. The only reason we left them on is in case the safety eye method absolutely didn't work. We would have an alternative. So there you go. You have an owl head. He's starting to look like his buddy over here.